Hello and welcome to Stock Market Voyager. I'm your host, Christy Kern, here to help you navigate the dynamic world of finance with exclusive interviews from top market leaders. So our guest today is CEL-SCI Corporation CEO Geert Kersten. Geert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, first of all, thank you for pronouncing my name right. It's okay. And second of all, everything is great. And I hope you're having a good day also. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you so much. Well, CEL-SCI is a clinical stage biotechnology company. It's focused on finding the best way to activate the immune system to fight cancer and infectious diseases. So your company's lead investigational therapy, Multikine, completed a pivotal phase 3 clinical trial involving head and neck cancer and has also received orphan drug status from the FDA. So we're going to talk about all of that. But first, can you please introduce yourself and also provide some background on CEL-SCI Corporation?
Sure. Well, thank you so much. Our first background on myself, from Germany, graduated high school in the UK, came to the US, undergraduate accounting, MBA finance, and law degree. So obviously I ended up in biotechnology, right? It seems to be completely unrelated, but it's completely related. Because I can tell you from my own experience, you can have great drugs, but if you don't survive the games of Wall Street, you don't make it. So we have a great drug. We've survived the games of Wall Street. We're in the final stretch. It's great. The idea that we're pursuing, though, is it's a harder idea. But again, we want to put our life to good use where we make an enormous difference. So you see cancer drugs being developed for dying cancer patients, and maybe they give 2 or 3 months of extra life, right? That's great. That's wonderful because everybody wants to make it to the next Christmas or birthday or that kind of stuff. But wouldn't it be better if you actually make that first cancer treatment more successful, right? Because the problem is not cancer itself, it's the recurrence of the cancer. In most cases, there are some cases where people are going to die rapidly no matter what. It's found too late. But in most cases, you can treat them successfully. And if it doesn't come back, they're good. So what they do is they do surgery, radiation, chemo. We hate the treatments. We don't want to use them, but they work in many cases. But when they don't work, you have a problem. That's where we come in. So we're a disruptor. And by the way, the money is the biggest money of all if you go up front, so we don't have to talk about money. The idea here is that your immune system is healthy right now, as evidenced by the fact that you're alive, and mine is too. We need to activate your immune system to find and kill cancer before surgery, radiation, and chemo have destroyed the immune system. Today, it's all the other way around. They use immunotherapy drugs afterwards. What's left of your immune system? It's the most disruptive idea in cancer. And our studies have shown it's non-toxic. Show me the non-toxic cancer drug. Right? Once people know it's possible to have a non-toxic cancer drug, don't you think they're going to ask for it? Anyway, that's what's kept us going. We're in the final stage. We have to do one more small study for the FDA. And, money just simply follows success.
Okay, so it's all very interesting. So before we get into the recent company updates, though, let's give our viewers some background on Multikine. How is it different from other drugs in the treatment of cancer?
Well, again, like I said, we use it up front as a first treatment. So let's say you go to the dentist. We work on head and neck cancer, which is from under your nose down to your clavicle, 6th biggest cancer in the world. The reason we picked that is because we've had basically no success in that treatment. And they cut your tongue out and horrible things, right? So we focus on the cancer that has a horrible need and then want to take it to breast cancer, melanoma, etc. But you prove it on one cancer. Unlike other companies, we don't give our drug to those patients who have already failed surgery, radiation, chemo. We give it to patients who've just been discovered to have the tumor and who are scheduled to get surgery, radiation, and chemo. So we give it before. Now, you might think that's easy. Well, you just take the drug that works in the back and you move it up front. No, it's really, the drugs are so toxic. You want to give that to your sister who might have cancer, right? As a first treatment, you're not going to take that chance. Right? For dying cancer patients, you take them to Mexico for some horrible treatments that might kill them because they're going to die in any case. Right? You'd never do that for someone who's been newly diagnosed. So the idea is, in which we showed it works, that when you give our immune system drug before, then do the normal treatments afterwards, you have much higher survival. The tumor doesn't come back. Well, you're cured, basically. And that's the great difference.
So your phase 3 trial is the largest ever in head and neck cancer with 928, so almost 1,000 patients enrolled in that. What were the results and what are the next steps moving forward for it?
Okay, so when you deal with dying cancer patients, you don't have to worry about a standard of care because nothing works. When we deal with newly diagnosed people, they must receive the standard of care treatment because it's known to help in head and neck cancer about 40% of people. So that's standard of care. So you give our drug for 3 weeks. And by the way, that's a really short time. You're just not allowed to delay the surgery. So then our drug for 3 weeks, then surgery. And then either radiation or radiation plus chemo. So it's a little complicated here, but that's a key point. Our drug had an almost 4-year survival benefit in the patients who got surgery and radiation, but when you added chemo, it didn't work. So put that in perspective. Drugs get approved with 1 or 2 months survival benefit. We had an almost 4-year survival benefit. So there clearly is something happening, but you have to figure out who the patients are, where it works best. And that's what the final study is for.
Okay. So in May of this year, you announced a significantly positive outcome from your recent meeting with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, about the path to approval for Multikine. So the FDA indicated that CEL-SCI might move forward with a confirmatory registration study of Multikine in that newly diagnosed advanced primary head and neck cancer patients. Tell us more about that.
Okay, so there are certain rules and procedures you need to follow, and just simply showing that you can help people is not enough to get your drug to market. You must do it such that they can check their boxes. Okay, and they're not going to change their procedures for a little company such as ours. So that means that because it didn't work with a certain set of patients in that big study, we now have to do a study with people where we have shown incredibly good survival benefit. So, for example, think about it. If you don't get chemo, you have an almost 4-year survival benefit. That's huge. So we were able to look back into this massive clinical trial, and we identified that this patient here has great benefit and that patient doesn't. So we're going to focus on all of those people that have the benefit. So it's not all 900,000 people in head and neck cancer. It's only about 100,000. But what we found is that they have a 5-year survival of 73% with our drug versus 45% without our drug. I think it's kind of obvious to any viewer that you want to be in the 73% with no toxicity, right? So, and then there are other things, something called a hazard ratio. And it's a hazard ratio of 0.35, which means you have a reduction of the risk of dying at any point during these 5 years. 65% reduction on the risk of dying. That's obviously huge, okay? If you run through the whole statistics, so the main question is, can you be successful when you repeat that study, right? Because if we're successful, our company currently valued under $100 million, based on historical comparisons, should be worth $5 or $10 billion. So therefore, that's a question of risk then. The statistics tell us that we're more than 95% likely to be successful in repeating the study. That's how good the statistics are. But we actually have to do it.
Okay. So most recently, you reported those positive results from a bias analysis conducted for a concluding phase 3 study and also for that target population for the confirmatory study. So you said that the goal of a bias analysis is to ensure that the trial's findings are reliable, the conclusions are valid, and also to minimize the risk that bias has distorted those results. So what can you tell us about that? And if there is no bias in the study population, what does that mean for your data and the likelihood of success for that confirmatory study?
So let's take a step back. The whole study was 928 people, including controls and all of that stuff. We found 114 who have unbelievably good survival, and with the statistics essentially saying we have an over 95% chance of being successful, which essentially means you have addressed the number one risk in biotechnology, which is your drug doesn't work. But you could have $1 billion in cash and great management team. If your drug doesn't work, you're sunk. So we think we have addressed that number one risk by focusing on those patients. And now, our 0.35 hazard ratio to people in the business is unbelievably good. Literally, the best cancer drugs out there don't do better than that. So therefore, if you look at us, and I've had a number of people do that, saying, how is it possible that you're a sub-$100 million company with data this good? So then people want to know, is there a bias among those 114? So the whole study was randomized controlled, so it's very well distributed. But we also published just recently that the 114 are well balanced. So the concern of people is that maybe the people who got our drug are not as sick as the people who got the control. And yes, then it would make sense. Our drug would have better survival because we have less sick patients. But in the press release we just put out, we give in the details, the distribution. It's well distributed, the same number of men, women, staging. And so what you know is that there's no bias. That means the data is very reliable, and therefore the survival benefit comes from our drug. Again, it addresses the number one risk in biotech. So everybody wants to be in a biotech company that develops a great cancer drug, right? They're going to make a lot of money. Everybody knows it. So we're at the point where we figured out exactly where our drug works, but the world is full of doubters. Well, how can that be? It's about so wonderful, but you've been working on this so long. And the answer is there must be something wrong, right? That's what they're saying. And we're showing them, no, there's nothing wrong. This is real data. We have done science the way you should do it. You figure out in the study where it works, and then you do your final study in that. And finance, money follows good work at helping people.
So moving on to some other company updates, the company has made several additions to the organization in the last just several months or so, including adding Dr. Giovanni Selvaggi as a clinical advisor. He's brought several oncology drugs to market. He was instrumental in the development and approval of the lung cancer drugs Zycaia for Novartis and Opdivo for Bristol Myers Squibb. What are some of the biggest strengths that Dr. Selvaggi brings to CEL-SCI as an advisor?
Well, first of all, he has the experience of having brought drugs to market, which is invaluable, right? But also he has been involved in bringing drugs to market in an accelerated manner. So what we have is in the 3 weeks, which again, I want to say is a really short time for a cancer drug to be used, but you can't make it longer because you can't delay the surgery. That's not good for survival. In the 3 weeks, things happen. So for example, tumors disappear. Everybody agrees that's good, right? Also, tumors shrink. And if they have to shrink over 30% to be counted. So what we see is that if your tumor shrinks in these 3 weeks by over 30%, there is a commensurate and very, very large increase in survival. That's called a predictor or surrogate marker. Historically, regulators have given an early approval called accelerated in the US, conditional outside of the US, because when they see a benefit in an unmet medical need, and this is a horrible unmet medical need, then they see that benefit, they're willing to take the risk for an early approval as they wait for the final endpoint. They always wait for survival in the end, right? But basically the point is he has experience in bringing drugs to market in an accelerated pathway And we hope to do the same thing because our drug produces these tumor responses and they predict that you will later on have increased survival. And literally, I can tell you, basically the same patient population in the last 5 years, Pfizer, the American Merck, the German Merck, and Bristol Myers all failed. So it's definitely a horrible and difficult to treat disease, and we look to be a winner.
Mario Gabo was also appointed to the board of directors, as well as Bob Watson, appointed chairperson of the board. He's served as the director of the company actually since 2017. How have these executive moves helped to strengthen operation plans for the upcoming confirmatory study of Multikine?
Look, the ultimate goal will be to turn this over to a large pharma company. So Keytruda, the super drug out there, has been developed for 40 indications, many different cancers. There's no reason why our drug has to be limited to head and neck cancer. Breast cancer, melanoma, cervical, anal, a whole bunch of cancers that we can think of today, and there will be many more. That must be done in the hands of a big pharmaceutical company. Our job, if you think about it, biotechnology is about driving things forward, taking the risks that the big guys won't take, and then we turn it over to them for the development work. So both of those, Mario Gaba has been in healthcare for decades, and he comes from Lazard, which was a big healthcare banker. And Mr. Watson, he's been involved in healthcare also. So they have a lot of connections, they have a lot of experience, and we benefit from that.
Well, this has been really just an incredible, insightful conversation today. Can you share with us before we go for our viewers where they can find some more information about your company?
Yes, on our website, obviously, the company, it's www.CEL-SCI, CEL, and a horizontal dash SCI.com, CEL-SCI.com. And we're an actively traded stock on the New York Stock Exchange, CVM, Charles Victor Mary.
All right, Geert Kersten, CEO of CEL-SCI Corporation. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to seeing how the company evolves, and of course, hope to have you back on the show sometime soon.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Bye-bye.